We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. I am so excited to welcome you to Season 7. Yes, this is my 7th season of the podcast. I cannot believe it. I started this podcast in December of 2018, and I really started it with the hope and dream of being able to bring what I now realize was more spirituality into your life. I've talked to mediums, I've talked to near-death experiencers, I've talked to some of the most brilliant minds that have researched how these experiences happen. I've talked to consciousness experts. We've explored astrology, numerology, dreams, precognitions, so much in this mystical, spiritual space. And I am so grateful to you, the listener, for supporting my work, for sharing my work, for allowing me to continue on this platform, which has brought me so much joy as I've watched so many of you learn and open your minds to different ways of thinking about healing. And really, my intention when I started this podcast back in 2018 was just that, to open your mind up to different ways that people have experiences of healing. And for me, as you know, if you've been listening to me for quite some time, mine was through this spiritually transformative experience with my aunt. And it was a life-changing experience that sent me on this path. And that is where we are today. So there's a lot that I just want to touch on as I bring you in and along to Season 7 with me. What has been a real shift for me in the past year is seeing how important spiritual health is to mental health. And that's really going to be my focus moving forward, is how are we thinking about our spiritual health as a pillar of our mental health. It is a perfect combination. And I think it's so important, as we know from Dr. Lisa Miller's work. And if you haven't heard my podcast with her, you can go back and listen to that we have an awakened brain and an achieving brain. And when we are in the achieving brain way of being, we are much less focused on the we. We are focused on the I. What can I achieve? How can I do better? Which leaves out the importance of why we are all here, which is this deep connection we have to one another, to the greater communities in which we exist in, and to this larger world, this larger universe. And so that is really where this year's podcast episodes are going to focus on, is how we can bring in and invite in more spirituality into our everyday lives. And what that looks like over the course of this year is not totally clear to me yet. I definitely have some episodes already recorded, and I'm so excited for you to hear my first episode of the year with Britt Hartley around no-nonsense spirituality and what happens when we go from this place of being completely nihilistic and reductionistic to opening up to our spirituality in the most beautiful way possible. And again, in whatever that means to you. One of the things that I've prided myself on over the course of these six years, now entering my 7th season, is providing you with the tools, providing you with different ways of thinking about your overall health and well-being via spiritual health. So again, through astrology, through mediumship, through near-death experiencer stories, through psychedelic experiences, but I always have that lingering question of, so now what? Now that you've had these experiences, what is it you're going to do with them? How are you going to use them and integrate them into your life so that you are moving your life forward, so that they're not just an amazing experience that you had if you had a medium reading and got connected with a loved one that had passed away, that you have that experience, but then what does the integration of that look like? How are you taking that experience and using it to really, truly change and transform your life? And if that's something you're interested in, then I want you to stay with me on that journey, because that is what this is all about, is continuing this spiritual journey into knowing yourself, into digging deeper into who you are, into what I talk about all the time in my course, tapping into the essence, the soul of who you are, so you can continue to live the best and most meaningful life, because that is what I believe we are all here to do. And so often I think we have talked about mental health in a vacuum, and we have completely left out the spiritual part of mental health, and we can't do it anymore. Psychology in many ways has lost its soul, and we need to find its way, and it needs to find its way back. And one way, and I think probably the most effective way to do that, is for you to get in touch with your own spiritual health and wellness. Again, I'm going to provide you with the tools, allow you to see what might be available to you. And then the joy is you get to choose your own adventure. You get to determine what that looks like. You get to determine how you want to step into your spiritual health in 2025. Because this year, this is it. We are at a tipping point. If you listen to my podcast with Marianne Williamson, Healing America's Soul, you will hear that we need to be tapping into our spiritual health. Otherwise, it's not looking good for our species. So join me on this journey. I want to talk also about all the myriads of ways that you and I can work together, because that's one of the things that I've been working on in 2024. If you were listening to me back then, you know that I took a sabbatical. I felt like my general well-being was exhausted. I was depleted. I was burning out. I wasn't burnt out yet, but I was definitely burning out. And I listened to what my intuition was telling me, which was, you need to step back. You need to take a break so you can get more clarity on what exactly it is you want to do moving forward. And so in that time, I spent a lot of time with myself and got very, very clear on what exactly it is that I want to be able to bring forth. And I did that in the end of 2024 with my course, Live Your Life Backwards. So if that is something that you are interested in, I will be launching a January cohort and a spring cohort likely. And then we'll take the summer off, because again, I'm going to be taking some time over the summer to recharge and reevaluate what it is exactly I can continue putting into this, because there's so many things that I want to do and so much that I'm super excited for. And I just need the time and space to do that. So if you are interested in that, you can go to my website. My website, actually, Dr. Amy Robbins, has everything that you need to know about what I will be offering in 2025. I also wanted to take a moment to thank those of you who have supported me. So this podcast has been really my fourth child. I have poured my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and honestly cannot do it and cannot continue to do it without your support. And this is a very, very difficult and uncomfortable thing for me to do, is to ask for help in this way, to ask for financial support. But if you have benefited from this podcast, I now have a circle community. So in the past, you might have just donated to the podcast. For that, I am so, so grateful. You are the reason. The donations that you have made are the reason this podcast has been able to keep going. And I truly, truly mean that. Like, this podcast and what it takes to run this podcast is not an inexpensive endeavor. And so every little bit has helped me tremendously. And again, I've said this before, it's very, very hard for me to step into this space and ask for help. But I do, in order to continue, need your continued support. So if you are someone who has benefited from this podcast, if you love this podcast, if this podcast has changed your life, even just by listening to one episode, you can go to the show notes, and there's a link to a Circle community. And in that community, we're just asking for $15 a month to be a part of this community. You'll get quarterly Q&As with me. You'll get to interact with this amazing community that we're building. All people interested, all people on this spiritual path, on their spiritual journeys to tap into their own essence, to grow their soul, which is what we are here to do. So you can find out more about that in the show notes. Also, if you just want to give a donation, I know people have been more than willing to do that. And for that, I am so grateful. Just email me and I'm happy to provide you with the information you need to go ahead and do that. I don't believe you can do that specifically through Circle. Circle is really this online platform for me growing my community. And additionally, other ways that we are working together, we could potentially work together. I do offer my spiritual consultations. Those are one-on-one. They're not therapy. They're not medium readings. They're kind of this amazing combination where we tap into what it is you need to do. What are sort of the next steps you need to take to continue to grow? Also, for those clinicians out there, make sure you are on my website, that you are on my mailing list. Everybody, make sure you're on my mailing list. But I am looking to launch something in this year specifically for clinicians, specifically for spiritually minded clinicians who want to bring more spirituality into their clinical work, but don't know how to do it, don't know how to talk about these experiences, these spiritually transformative experiences that people are having. If someone brings in that they worked with a medium or an astrologer or a numerologist, they don't know what to do with that information. And we need to be meeting our clients where they are in their journeys. And again, I believe that all of the tools that I've talked about on the show are tools for journey toward healing. So if that is something that you're interested in, make sure you are signed up so you don't miss what's coming. Again, so much that I'm working on, so much that I'm excited to bring forth to you. And I just want to say that I am so incredibly grateful. I'm grateful that you have allowed for this platform to continue, this podcast to continue to unfold. I have over 400 episodes, almost 2 million downloads. So if you have benefited from this, share it. That's all I ask. If you can't donate money, if you can't support the podcast financially, share the podcast, rate and review the podcast. That makes a difference. And all of my growth has been organic, and all of it has been because of you. So with that, I am so excited to welcome you to season 7, 2025, our year where we make our spiritual health a priority. So come along, join me on this journey, and I can't wait to hear your feedback, what you think of these episodes. And if there's episodes that you're interested in and people that you want me to have on the show, please reach out. As you know, we are a tribe. We are journeying together in this space, and I want you to come along and be a part of it. So if there are guests that you think would be value added to this, you would love to hear on the show, send them my way. And also, don't forget your ghost stories. Ghost stories are the listeners' most favorite shows. Everyone always reaches out how much they love the ghost stories. Ghost stories are your stories, your experiences with signs and synchronicities, messages from beyond, from behind the veil. So go ahead and send those to me. I'll be bringing those back in 2025. I sort of fell off a little bit in 2024, but it is coming back for you. So with that, welcome to season 7 of Life, Death, and the Space Between. Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.